is led to all of this.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Backlot Banter. I'm Tanner Extra, joined as, not as always, but as sometimes,
Yes.
with my downright demonic co-host, Abram Buner.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much for
That's
having me.
right. We are here today to talk about the film that is taking the world by storm, or at least some of the world, film Twitter largely. That is the film Longlegs, from director Osgood Perkins, starring Maika Monroe and Nicolas Cage, a throwback to investigative thrillers of the 90s and the 1980s. But I almost called you Tucker. I'm so used to this. But Abram, before we get too far into it, I want to remind our dear viewer here to subscribe to Backlot Banter, like this video, comment down below your thoughts on what is potentially the scariest movie of all time. We'll talk about it. And also, if you want to talk about this film further, or any films, or video games, or comics, or music, or what have you, we have a Discord server, link in the description. Join up there. You get the deal. Talk about stuff with us. It's a good time. Abram,
Yes.
I'm going to throw it over to you.
Okay.
Your thoughts on the film Longlegs.
My non-spoiler thoughts are this. I think the movie is great.
Okay.
But I think that anybody watching the film needs to understand that there is a difference between Longlegs as this sort of marketed item and Longlegs as a filmic experience. and we were talking about this when we left the theater. They were very good at selling Longlegs as something it's not, I feel. It's not particularly scary, I don't feel.
It obviously has its moments. It is a horror movie.
It is a horror movie, but it's a lot more... The closest comparison that our audience might get to me is like True Detective Season 1.
Okay.
And through that lens, I really love the film. I think it has this very interesting, offbeat vibe in that it's very dour, obviously, but there are these comedic notes, there are these irreverent notes, there's this perpetual sense of dread, largely achieved through sound design, through beautifully composed shots that always leave space for something to maybe be lurking in the background, even if it isn't.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very easy to just sort of get enraptured in how peculiar a lot of our performances are, a lot of the dialogue is, and how surprising the narrative is. It's not... Again, it's not the film they said it was going to be, but I think that's fine because what we got is quite special.
Exactly. So yeah, this is one of the most supremely well-marketed films I've ever bored witness to, I guess I would say. Simply because, yes, the narrative was this is the scariest, most fucked up thing you've ever seen in your entire life. It's not that. It's still very, very good, in my opinion. I agree with every note that Abram brought out there. It is basically like a masterclass in horror aesthetic, I would say. Osgood Perkins very clearly has a grasp on the genre and how to convey the moods of that genre in every element of his filmmaking. It's very, very impressive from that standpoint. I have my setbacks, my sort of notes on the film. There's one big one is really the only thing that I have, and we'll get to that because that's very much a spoiler thing. But otherwise, I really had a good time with this. I felt like it's a super involving work. You get enraptured into its weird sort of offbeat moods and the ways in which its characters talk and communicate, and the way in which the world operates and how the mystery unfolds itself is very, very interesting and very, sort of enrapturing from an audience standpoint. So really enjoyed this. Let's talk performances. Like I said, the two main stars of this on the poster are going to be Maika Monroe, who has had her films here and there, but is certainly not a household name like her co-star Nicolas Cage is. But she is our main character. She is Lee Harker, FBI agent Lee Harker, who, and this is a mild spoiler, but I feel like, not a major thing, seems to inhabit some sort of abilities, some what do they call them?
She's got like ESP.
She's like a psychic, or perhaps like her boss, Agent Carter, portrayed by Blair Underwood, says a half psychic. So there's that. And I think she's very good. She operates in this different sort of performance realm than a lot of the other characters or actors do, where she can, I guess, to some audience eyes, she might come off as a bit dry, but I think that is very much the character.
Yeah, I think that what's interesting about her is that she doesn't really invite the audience in.
Mm-hmm.
There's this scene, it's not really a spoiler, she's sitting on a little girl's bed and they're having a regular conversation.
Yes, this is towards the beginning of the film, yeah.
But it's framed in this great way where she is kind of facing away from the child, and
Yes.
the child's like idolizing her. She loves that.
Yeah, she's like looking up to her like this, and then Maika Monroe has her like back to her.
Yeah, she wants to know about her time in the FBI, and we're getting these very clipped answers out of her.
Mm-hmm.
I think the performance is very interesting in this respect. She's very quickly thrown into the deep end. The film starts in medias res, if you will, Tanner.
Yes. Well, it does start on like a flashback, but that's besides the point. Yeah.
It starts at a moment of high tension. How about?
Right.
And so we get pieces of her life in weird ways, in odd flashbacks,
Yes.
in strange phone conversations, in very peculiar dialogue exchanges, in person with her captain and everything. And I think the reason that the mystique around her is effective is because of the performance, because she feels it's hard to put your finger on the right adjective, because it's not, I wouldn't say it's dry, I wouldn't say it's cloistered, I would just say it's kind of weird. And I think that the off-kilter nature of her performance of this dialogue sells what is a rarely grounded script.
Absolutely. I would say the most grounded, normal-seeming person is not her, actually, but probably Agent Carter, portrayed by Blair Underwood. I think I had mentioned him earlier. But yeah, I mean, we'll get to him, I suppose, but Monroe herself is a sort of affecting this. I've never seen the show. This is coming from a friend who made this comparison. Very much affecting this like Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks kind of thing,
Sure.
where he himself is pretty straight down the line, but there are things about him that you don't know. But he's more just delivering his lines with such a cadence that you're like, well, I find this guy interesting.
For sure.
There's clearly something wrong with him, but also he's surrounded by such weird people that he's like maybe fourth or fifth down the list in any given scene who is acting the weirdest.
I mean, this film also trades pretty heavily on the aesthetics and some of the plot beats of Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there is a lot of Clarice in this performance, but it's like a Bizarro World Clarice.
It is definitely a Bizarro World Clarice.
And I think that that's very interesting. I mean, this film does wear its influences pretty heavily on its sleeve. This, Cure,
Yes.
two big ones. I do think True Detective is in there as well. And I think sort of triangulating this film at the center of all these things, and for our game fans out there, things like Alan Wake.
Oh yeah, sure.
I think if you like these and you kind of find the intersection, you're going to understand what you're getting out of here.
Yeah. It's not like scared. It's not wall to wall scares here for sure. Like we kind of talked about.
Yeah.
Well, I'll briefly touch on Blair Underwood, who I think, like I said, plays this like FBI sort of director character, or just a superior to Lee Harker, Maika Monroe's character, and like I said, clearly playing like the most normal guy in all of this, who's just like, well, this lady seems to be able to intuit some things about criminal cases, so we're going to get her on board this serial killer case that's been, a thorn in the FBI side for 30 years at this point.
Yeah.
The Longlegs killer. And just the outset of that case, I know I'm taking like a sort of a branch off from this. I mean, this is what I'm talking about when I say this is such like an enrapturing film. When they set up the stipulations and the like motives and modes of operation of the Longlegs killer, you're like, oh damn, that is really fucking interesting. Because it's not just like killer goes into people's house, kills people. I'm not going to say what it actually is, but it's far more interesting and far more interesting. Right, I just said that twice. It's far more interesting from a, well, how are they going to solve this? And is what he's doing literally serial killing? Like what is the intricacies of what Nicolas Cage character is doing here? Because he is very clearly from the outset the person that they're hunting down.
Yes.
You see him in that opening flashback. He says the name of the movie, and then we get the title card. It's pretty good. I mean, obviously, it's Nicolas Cage. He's in this phase of his career where he's operating on almost a meta level of the audience's connection to him, being a over-the-top, will do anything, will go the distance, will crank it up to 11, 12, 13 in his performance. And that's just a given with him.
Yeah.
And he is doing that here. He is cashing in on that Nicolas Cage late career persona.
And I think it's really effective. I mean, I kind of want to get into spoilers with him. Should we clip off non-spoilers? Is there anything else non-spoiler you want to say?
Is there anything else non-spoiler? I mean, I just want to parrot a lot of what you said in the opening, that this film looks fantastic. The sound design is intense. The cinematography, where it's a can be more common in horror now, where we sort of frame things off to the side and perhaps leave a window or a door frame in the background, and it's like the movie trains you to be like, Nicolas Cage Longlegs is fucking watching her, or she thinks that he is in any case, so you gotta be on the lookout for silhouettes here and there. And that's just super effective filmmaking for a horror movie, is to always make your audience on edge of what might be lurking around any corner, much like Maika Monroe is. She never knows if he's gonna be in a house, in a room, waiting in the back of her car, in the library, wherever he is. So just really astounding filmmaking from Osgood Perkins here, who this is the first time I've seen a film of his. He's got a couple other ones, some coming down the pike, but with the level of attention that this film is getting, I can really feel like this is kind of like a flashpoint moment for him in his career.
I mean, we watched it in a sold-out theater.
We did, absolutely.
The showtime after us was sold out. The showtime before us was sold out.
Yes, it's going to be a pretty massive deal, I think. Yeah. I think it's reaching beyond even like online film circles for sure.
I think so, and I think it's also it's a testament to the filmmaking beyond what you said already too. I think it's brilliantly edited. Mm-hmm. Now, I watch between 0 and 3 horror movies a year.
Right.
So I'm already more sensitive to a lot of horror aesthetics and scares than most people are. Mm-hmm. But I didn't find it that hard to watch because so much is done expertly through suggestion, through cutaways that are chilling opposed to cheap. Mm-hmm. There are moments when we are learning about the case early on, and it's through sound design.
Yes, or even sound design, and even like brief flashes like that's just stuff that's like designed to get you to like, whoa, what was that? And it's really effective in that case. Like, it's jump scare, but not in the way that 99% of horror movies will do jump scares. It's more like, well, our character is imagining this horrible action or these horrible details about whatever she's being explained, and that's what those flashes are, and that's what makes them effective. It gets you in the headspace of that character.
I agree. So if you're like a little bit wimpy like me, but you're interested in this movie, I would say you're good to go see it. And I
would definitely recommend this. It does not have like horrid imagery or anything like that.
For the most part, no.
For the most part, I would say not. Like, like there's obviously scary stuff in here, so keep that in mind. But it's more of like a serial killer thriller thing with.
And that's one thing. Is that the spoiler?
Yes, I'm gonna say so.
Okay.
So spoilers from here on out. We both like the movie.
Go see it. It's great.
Go for sure see the movie.
But don't take like your toddler. It is still scary.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So spoilers from here on out. We're talking about it.
I didn't really. Well, I'll put it to you this way.
Okay.
I read David Ehrlich's review, so I knew that it was a supernatural thriller.
Yeah.
I didn't really get that from the trailers.
Yeah.
And I was very intrigued by the way that the film. Obviously, we have this cold open on the flashback of Longlegs encountering Harker for the first time. But when we really get into the current day narrative, we're immediately establishing that there's something strange here.
Yeah.
That in this cookie cutter neighborhood, Harker can point to a house and say that whatever type of criminal is in there is in there.
Yeah, some other killer or whatever that they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think bearing that in mind, the plot sort of surprised me in a way that I didn't necessarily anticipate it to. Because if you're thinking about this through the paradigm of Silence of the Lambs, you're thinking about it through the paradigm of True Detective, insert any genre fare here.
Now, True Detective season 1 is like, there is like a cult, right? But it's not supernatural, really.
It is supernatural.
Okay.
However, it's about finding a killer, and by the end you overcome whatever insecurity you had or worry there is, and you get the serial killer. And
Longlegs is certainly leaning into supernatural more than those other materials did. Absolutely. Of course, like Silence of the Lambs, there's no supernatural element to that.
Yeah, and so when Longlegs becomes a very clear force in the narrative fairly early on, and when he is apprehended. What would you say, an hour and 15 minutes in the film?
Probably? Yeah, something like that, yeah.
I think that there's a particular level of intrigue that the film cultivates by having it be clear early on that there's more at play here than just Mr. Longlegs. And so I think that makes his performance, Nick Cage's performance, even more interesting because he's allowed to be in some ways like this fucking nuts accomplice.
Yeah.
He's ultimately in some ways not even the main human villain of the narrative.
No, I mean, we're in spoilers so we can mention it, but yeah, I mean, even with the hey, it's the devil, he's a Satan worshiper kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like you get that happening, you get that sense not only from like the very first moment that you kind of see him in his like basement room or wherever that he lives, like, which is a shocking moment in itself because you're just like, oh, there he is. He's like in his like serial killer lair right now. And then the camera spins around and he's like looking across this long hallway to another desk and like a shadow moves in the background. You're like, well, what the fuck was that? Yeah. And so it's doling you out these supernatural elements throughout the film, and I was really digging that. And yeah, to Nicolas Cage's performance, and we should have maybe talked about this more in non-spoilers, where he's just going off the rails immediately. He's walking into stores and accosting young cashiers with his weird cuckoo hand deal.
Yeah.
And screaming in a car to himself, singing. He sings a lot in this movie. But yeah, he gets to be this like, there's something bigger that you haven't even discovered yet. You think you got me, but there's something even bigger. And there is a final reveal at the end of this film, and that is that, ultimate spoilers here, Maika Monroe's, Lee Harker's mother is in fact the accomplice that they discover is probably involved in the Longlegs killings. She was sort of involved from the very moment that Lee Harker herself was targeted by Longlegs 20 years ago, and that was this flashpoint moment where Longlegs, Nicolas Cage's character, was like, "Listen, devil worshiper here. I'm gonna give you Satan. I'm gonna give you a doll that has Satan in it, and it's gonna drive you crazy and make everyone in this house kill each other." And that's like the reveal to the murders, is that it's literally like satanic magic that is forcing oftentimes the fathers of these families to murder their entire family and themselves.
Yeah, and this is sort of where my biggest issue with the film comes in.
Okay.
Because it's a slow burn for a lot of the time. And it's not only a slow burn, but it's a film that doles out information rarely, actually. As we're following Longlegs' letters, as we're doing autopsies on dolls, as we're meeting bizarre side characters, we're sort of just like putting ideas into a bucket of who is Longlegs, what's going on. We don't really know. And I think that's very compelling as an audience member.
I would tend
to
to
just
agree.
sort of be bathed in the mood and have these pieces you have to try to string together. We do reach that hard left-hand turn where the film explains itself.
And that was my major note, is that I didn't like this in an earlier sort of like cult hit horror movie of this year, Late Night with the Devil, where at the end of the film, in the last 10 minutes, it's just like, okay, so here is us explaining everything that's going on with the plot of this film and the background and everything like that. I didn't like that in Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah.
I don't think I like it in Longlegs either. There's a different way it operates here. Obviously, the mood and aesthetic of Longlegs I appreciate a lot more. And also, as I sort of stumbled upon in our discussions last night, I feel like with this film, I would not have been able to put it together. Unlike Late Night with the Devil, where I was like, oh, these are really cool plot elements. I think I figured out what's going on here. Longlegs, you're right. It's just, we're getting a bunch of different pieces, but we need to dump them out, arrange them for you, and then fill in the other 50% of pieces for you in this, this narration in the last 10 minutes.
And I think the issue with it is just more that I feel like it's not congruent with how effectively information was doled out earlier in the movie.
I agree, yeah.
And even in the second half, there is still great stuff. Like, we get these really interesting but ultimately isolated shots of Longlegs' cavern in the first half of the film. And then I love how it's revealed that Longlegs his den is in Harker's house.
Yeah, the basement of her. She was right under her feet, right under her feet, like they say in the FBI office when they have captured him. Earlier, when she visits her mother, same deal, right under her feet.
Yeah, and then she has to drive his car back to the captain's house. I think that beats like this are really good, and I think the film ends on a suitably moody and ambiguous note. I just think that we run so fast into exposition that it kind of takes me out of the story.
I totally felt that. And here's the thing: I wanted this to be like a perfect 5-star movie for me.
Yeah.
And I think I want to return to it, watch it again, and see if that still bugs me to a certain extent. But that's the one thing sticking out to me is this ending narration, and I can try to excuse it in as many ways that I can. But ultimately, it pulls me out of it. I would tend to agree. And Abram, we are. I don't mean to brag, but I feel we are slightly more enlightened or intuitive film watchers than most people. Like Harker, more intuitive. So for broader audience appeal, they're probably going to need a little bit of explainer here.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't do even if it was left totally ambiguous and we had to go to r/Longlegs to try and piece this together, most people aren't going to like that. Most people are not fans of ambiguous endings. So I don't know. I feel like they should have gone down that route, but they didn't. So you have to make of what the actual movie is as you would.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that it's probably in some way a commercial concession, but I also feel as though the aesthetics of the film are so strong that even when we're in this expository sequence and we're moving between these 4:3 shots,
yes, it's like Super 8 sort of aspect ratio here.
It's so effective.
The filmmaking there is not lacking in any regard. It's more of a scripting issue above anything else. Yeah. So I don't know, is that it? I do want to say that from the very outset, when she first visits the captain's family and is like, "Hey, you're invited to his daughter's birthday party," it's like that kid, this family is going to be the target of the Longlegs killer.
Yeah,
I mean that's very obvious from the out, but they obviously do pay that off in a very interesting and compelling way at the end of the film.
Yeah, I think they're really good at dropping clues that are obviously going to pay off to kind of give you something to string you through the ambiguity.
Exactly. You're not completely lost. You're like, okay, I'm picking up on things that this movie is doing.
You got that. You got her mother and the beautiful production design in her mother's house. This fucking hoarder shit. Yeah. Kind of like our shelves, but if it was an entire home.
Yeah, but if it wasn't like video games and movies, if it was like religious iconography and whatnot.
Yeah. So I mean, I think this film is exquisite. I also think that it's surprisingly funny.
Yeah.
It contains a very interesting tonal dimensions that I think are best just experienced. I would highly recommend going to see Longlegs. For me, it's like a B. It's like a B+.
Okay, well you need to give a number, Abram.
What do you get for a B+? A B+ is like an 88.
Okay.
I'll give it an 88.
8.8. Okay.
An 8.8.
I'll do the same. I'll like an 8.9. Just to one up you a little bit.
That's fair enough.
All right, folks. Thank you so much for watching this review of Longlegs. Let us know your thoughts on this film in the comments down below. Join our Discord server. We'll be back with as many horror movies as we can force Abram to go see and review with us. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
No.